My name is Wiley, and I own the store High Energy Vintage in Somerville. I've been in Somerville, had the store in Somerville for about 5 years. The name High Energy Vintage kind of comes from like the fun, kind of like exciting vintage stuff that we have here, like bright, loud 80s and 90s clothing, and then like old school video games that are like, you know, powered with like electricity. So it's like high energy. So the business I started myself about 7 years ago over in the SOA vintage market. So there, I was really pretty much selling the same kinds of stuff. It was records, vintage clothing, and old school video games. And right now my partner, Jessamy, works in the store now. We just launched an Etsy store, which has been really great. So an average day at the store just starts with, you know, pretty basic stuff. You know, we open up the doors, put some records outside, put some clothes outside, and then unless anything's planned, just wait for people to come on in. But most of the time there's a lot of merchandise that needs to be sorted through, whether it's records that need to be opened up and you gotta check the condition and then put them in sleeves and then put prices on them, put them out, or if it's, you know, old school video games that need to be cleaned and tested and priced. Or it might be vintage clothing that needs to be sorted, and then it needs to be sorted, then washed, and then hung up on hangers, and then steamed, and then priced. We do a lot of community events at the store. I think the longest running one is an event called Disaster Piece Theater, which is a monthly VHS screening, sort of a bad movie night, as you might call it, where we show a really, really bad movie on VHS and usually make fun of the movie and eat pizza and drink beer and stuff. Running a small business here in Somerville isn't really that difficult. I mean, we don't have a lot of like competition per se. Like, I know all the rest of the people in the city that own, you know, like vintage clothing stores, and we're definitely not at all in competition. Like, we all do events together and set up together, and sometimes even do events at each other's shops. So I don't really look at it in terms of competition. One thing you do have to compete with always, though, I feel like, is the internet. You have to make sure that, like, even as a small business, you have an internet presence. That's really important. If you want to make, you know, the amount of sales you need to make to keep your doors open, you might need to have an eBay page or an Etsy page, and Instagram, Facebook, the whole thing, you know, to always be putting your what you're selling out there. And to reach different markets that might not just be in Somerville. You might have some really interesting, you know, 80s designer dress or shirt or something that, you know, people in Somerville might think is pretty cool, but maybe nobody's willing to spend, you know, $150 in some weird designer shirt. But as soon as you put it up online, people go nuts about it. So the future of High Energy Vintage, well, I want to continue to own the store for as long as I want. I go kind of off and on about working in the store full time, just because there's a lot of other things that I do. So I don't necessarily see myself working in the store full time in 5 years, but I definitely think the store will be here in 5 years. I definitely have a favorite decade. I'd have to say it's probably the 80s. I love like 80s movies and 80s video games and 80s music. So if I had to go back in time, it would definitely probably to like the early 80s. Maybe even the end of the 70s, so you can like catch the beginning of the 80s. I'm not really sure, but somewhere around there is definitely my favorite time period. My favorite video game system is definitely the Sega Genesis. I'm a big Sega Genesis fan. It's the system I had when I was a kid, and I've got like the Sega CD, which attaches to the Sega Genesis, and the 32X, which also attaches to the Sega Genesis, and the Power Base Converter, which also attaches to the Sega Genesis. And I just definitely love Sega Genesis games. They're totally my favorite. All right, so I picked up this big lot of clothing from a house clean out a couple weeks ago. Some of it's weird, some of it's like a lot of housewares and stuff like that. So the first thing I always do when I get a bunch of clothing like this is I sort through it and kind of figure out what's in it. Pretty cool shirt. I check to see if it's like damaged or if it's like, because anything that's like really heavily damaged, just throw out before even washing it. This stuff is all looking pretty good. It's got kind of a mothball-y smell, so like when I wash it, here's like a weird bathrobe. This will probably just go in the trash. Now usually people, well, I mean, so this is a lot of 60s stuff in this. So usually when you have like a lot of vintage clothing, people want you to buy it. People also do come in the store sometimes with stuff. So these are really cool. These are really cool like 1960s skirts. These are really great. I just got in a big lot of like 70s and 80s Western shirts for men. I think those will be pretty popular. Those are always a good seller. Guys like them. Kind of like this one right here. They've got the nice cool pearl snaps. I feel like those are pretty awesome. And they're the kind of thing that you can't get in most places in Boston because there's just not a lot of vintage Western wear here. So people like that. Oh, my favorite item in the store. Well, this is an original 1979 Millennium Falcon. That's definitely pretty cool. My favorite shirt in the store is this vintage Western shirt right here that happens to have a deer embroidered on the back of it. I think that's pretty neat. Vintage t-shirts are always a big hit with people. We got some pretty cool ones in. That's a cool shirt. Classic. The one outside's called Belinda. I actually don't know the name of that one. She's a mannequin, you know? She's just wearing some great 70s pants and she's got a great 70s shirt on. I do usually dress the mannequins. I try to keep clothes on them too when they're especially when they're outside, otherwise people get a little weirded out. Lately though, a lot of people have been trying to buy all my mannequin arms. I have about 6 or 7 mannequins. And didn't really know what else to do with the mannequin arms, so I put them in a box, but people have been trying to buy them. Just the arms. I guess that maybe a catchphrase for high energy vintage would be great new old stuff. I think my girlfriend named that one, and I don't remember the name of her. How about that one? I'm just going to call her Lucille.